that I've been speaking to on DMs. If you have some time.
Let's go. Let's hit it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm going to show you guys 3 simple techniques to help you become unpredictable in Apex Legends. Now these 3 techniques will open the door to new opportunities and will help you improve and have that dangerous side that a lot of players are missing. Now if you go ahead and enjoy today's video, be sure to scroll down, leave a like to support the video, be sure you're subscribing as always if you're currently not subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on any future Apex Legends videos. And if you're currently feeling quite bored during this quarantine period, then be sure to check out my Twitch down below in the description if you want to see positive streams, good vibes and some good Apex Legends gameplay. But now with all of that out of the way, let's jump straight into the first technique to help you become less predictable. So the first technique we're going to be speaking about will help you in them close quarter engagements, and I must repeat, this is only going to be beneficial in close quarter engagements. You don't want to try this at medium to longer ranges, and that is jumping on the form of cover that is stopping you and the enemy from seeing each other and then coming at the enemy from above. Now I made a video on this quite a few months ago and I spoke about how it's a very effective tip, and the only thing you need to bear in mind is that the cover is taller than you and the enemy, so when you are actually jumping onto the form of cover you're not exposed. This is a very awesome play to make and it does require a bit of quick thinking, but now you know about this tip, the next time you're engaging with an enemy and there's a nice piece of cover around you that is taller than you, be sure to jump onto that and then push the enemy from height advantage, because then you have the ultimate control during that gunfight. If you want to retreat from the gunfight, you have the opportunity to do so because you have got a height advantage, whereas the enemy is completely exposed and they have no other choice than to just keep shooting at you. Now the way this technique is most effective is if you and the enemy have already engaged with each other prior to using this technique. Once you and the enemy go to cover, that's when you want to jump and then push. That's the most effective way of using this technique, as it will completely bamboozle the enemy. I would also like to say this is still very effective on simple straight walls that have no sort of surface to them. As you guys can see from this example here, I've dealt a bit of damage into the enemy. The moment me and the enemy aren't in view of each other, I do some quick thinking and I gain some immediate height, and that was such an easy down because I used this technique to my advantage. The enemy actually had the same idea in mind in this example. As you saw, the enemy tried to climb up on that same wall, which is quite rare. Usually enemies won't think that smartly ahead, but this is why it's important to be faster and have that fast thinking brain turned on, because as soon as you get the opportunity, you want to take that opportunity straight away. Once you've gained that crucial height, then the job is already halfway done. So moving on to our second tip on how to be unpredictable in Apex Legends, we're going to be talking about cover baiting. Now cover baiting is essentially tricking the enemy into thinking that you're retreating, but you're actually not. You're actually prepared for a gunfight and you're going to pounce back at the enemy as soon as possible. Now the best way to explain this is to show you an in-game example. So as you guys can see here, we've landed in Mirage. I'm about to 1 vs 3 clutch this enemy team, but this second enemy has caused me a bit of a problem. So what I do is I run away from the enemy, but the second I manage to pull into cover, I immediately come straight back out again, even if the enemy is still shooting, because the human mind can only react to a certain speed. So usually when you've gone to cover, the enemy will still fire a couple of shots afterwards and then they'll completely stop. And this is where the mind games come into play, because essentially once you've gone to cover, you immediately want to do the reverse of that and come straight back out again, and that will shock the enemy to a point where you're going to either catch them running towards you, you're either going to catch them retreating, or you're going to catch them reloading their weapon. And I would say on average you have about 1 whole second to deal as much damage into the enemy as possible before they have enough time to react to you and then stop shooting you themselves. But 1 whole second in a gunfight is a very long time. You have to shoot at the enemy as much as possible, deal as much damage as you can, and potentially even down the enemy. So how is this technique most effective? Well, the first thing you need to bear in mind is the way you've retreated. Now if the enemy has landed a few shots into you and then you go into retreat mode, that plays the act a little bit better for you to come straight back out again, because if the enemy's dealt some damage into you, they're likely going to push you and then you can catch them whilst they're in their running animation. It will take time for them to pull up their weapon, and that's probably the best situation situation where you can come out and deal damage into them yourself. But one thing you want to bear in mind is that you haven't taken a considerable amount of damage to the point where you're going to lose a gunfight, but you're likely going to get a second to deal as much damage into them before they can pull their weapon up in time. Now this technique doesn't work as well if you're peeking in and out of cover and if you haven't gone into retreat mode where you've run into that cover, because an enemy is likely to be more cautious if you're peeking in and out of cover to expect you to come out of cover more often, so you can't really catch the enemy off guard in this sort of situation. But if you're running into cover because you've been dealing damage, then that is the best way you can abuse this method. The time in which you go to cover and then come back out of cover will determine how effective this technique is going to be. If you're going to go into cover and then come out a few seconds after, then you're going to allow the enemy time to either reload or even push you, and the unpredictability side is effectively ruined. Whereas if you go into cover and immediately pounce back out again, you will catch the enemy off guard and at their most vulnerable, and it's the best way in order for you to be unpredictable. I love killing enemies or downing enemies using this technique. It's so satisfying and it really makes you feel good as a player. So the last technique we're going to be speaking about is your approach towards enemies. Now I want to go quite in depth with this one because there are some things that you guys aren't doing in gunfights. Now it can be quite hard to approach enemies unpredictable depending where on the map you're trying to approach enemies, but in a lot of situations there is always an opportunity to approach an enemy in an unpredictable area to gain some free shots. A lot of buildings that have zip lines and stairs are very predictable areas. Zip lines are very loud in this game, and if you're going up the stairs, enemies will easily be able to hear you, but mantling in this game is not loud at all, and you can only hear it a little bit yourself, let alone the enemies hearing it at all. Now in this example where I managed to get to a very unpredictable place using Pathfinder, you guys can actually do this without Pathfinder. As you guys can see with Wraith, you can also get to this exact position in very little time to be completely unpredictable and go in an area which not only catches the enemy off guard but also gives you that slight height advantage to retreat from gunfights. Now if you take a look at this example here, I've laid into the enemy is retreating. Now even something so simple like approaching the enemy from a different door to what they're expecting can catch them completely off guard. As you guys can see, the enemy was waiting at the other door, so when enemies are in buildings or in rooms, just think of an unpredictable area where they would least expect you. Get out, played. That's when I say be unpredictable, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes longer navigating around a different route, but that pays off because you're going to be approaching them in an unpredictable area and could essentially be dealing more damage and doing better for yourself than if you were to go in a predictable route and possibly go down. Many people are unaware that you can actually mantle to the top of most buildings in this game using different types of walls, even things that are poking out of the wall, such as these, I think they're electric boxes or something like that. Usually you have things poking out of walls that you can actually mantle on, and you can use that as leverage to get onto the next floor. So it's good to study buildings and have a good understanding on what will give you more leverage and what won't. And the next time you see enemies in a building, have a look if you can get on top of that building in an unpredictable way without having to use an obvious route which will expose your location. Now when we talk about open space areas, it's much harder to approach them in an unpredictable way, bearing in mind you haven't got much cover around you, but there is one way you can approach them in an unpredictable way. If you retreat from the gunfight, go into cover, wait till your teammates start engaging, then you can go towards the side angles and catch the enemy from a different angle compared to where your teammates are currently shooting them. That usually catches enemies off guard, and you're basically using your teammates to your advantage. Once you hear your teammates engaging, that is the distraction caused for the enemy. That gives you an opportunity to go around the outskirts of that area and approach the enemy from a different angle, and enemies can't usually focus on two places at once, and one way or another they're going to crumble. So that's going to wrap up this video on 3 3 simple techniques to be unpredictable in Apex Legends. Now, I have got loads of other techniques to help you be more unpredictable. These techniques are more advanced. I might save this for a completely different video, but if you want to see more videos on being unpredictable, be sure to let me know down below in the comment section, and be sure to like the video to show your support for these types of videos. Being unpredictable is something important, and if you're serious about improving at Apex Legends, then you need to have this sort of advantage in your game, because the skill level only reaches to a certain point. After that, it turns into mind games, and you really need to start thinking about being unpredictable in different situations, and that could be the only reason sometimes why you're winning more gunfights than usual. So I'm going to wrap this video up here. As always, if you did enjoy today's video, be sure to scroll down, leave a like. If you're currently not subscribed to the channel, I hugely recommend you subscribe so you don't miss out on any videos like this one you've seen today, which could really help improve your game. Be sure to follow my Twitch down below in the description if you want to keep up to date with my future live streams, engage with me, talk more about Apex Legends. Be sure to follow that down below. Thank you all for watching, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch all of you guys out in another brand new Apex Legends video.